Jennifer Schaumburg, welcome to the Insight Jam.
Hello.
You have a lot of interesting things happening. Tell me a little bit about what it's like to kind of run multiple businesses. So you've got Real Business and Fuse, and now you're teamed up with the Unrivaled group. I mean, talk a little bit about, how it is to juggle all that.
Do it with a smile every day, stay positive, try not to pull your hair out, but it's really been a phenomenal learning curve. Fuse was launched as a really traditional small business. I tell people, I literally went to work every day and just thought, just do good things and good things will come to you, do good business, be honest. I did not realize that would limit my ability to scale, ever. And then meeting Unrivaled Group brings in, like I said, that digital channel. Marketing, I was never a marketing person, always a tech person, never had a respect for the importance of creating those digital channels. So I learned quite a bit, and I'm still learning every day. And actually, taking both of those and putting them together, Real Business is the engine. And one of my Fortune customers actually introduced me. So my partner, I always call him the esteemed engineer, and he hates it. He's really like security, comms, DOD sort of guy. No nonsense. From Chicago. So, really running all three of them has been a learning experience every day. It can get a little bit overwhelming, but I literally get up every day and go, you get to go out and change the world, and you have a how to do it. So, it's a lot, but it's well worth it. And it's actually a lot of fun.
Well, let's talk about how the world is changing for a little bit, because we did go through a pandemic, and that certainly changed the world, but now there's technology that's very much about to change the world. And I'm old enough to remember. Well, I'm old enough to remember a lot of things, but I remember the PC when it first arrived, and what that meant to business. But then I also, very specifically, because at the time I was in politics, so I was not a technologist by any stretch, though I was using technology in politics. But I remember when the internet arrived, and I remember very specifically deciding I needed to get away from politics and get into this internet thing.
Catch yourself
this looks
in
like
AOL.
It might just catch on. might be something. So I literally taught myself HTML in 1998, and became a web developer, quote unquote. But at the time, that's all you really needed to be was kind of self-taught with HTML, and you're reasonably dangerous. And somebody hired me at a ridiculous amount of money, and off I went. But soon fell into sales and marketing and all that stuff, just as a matter of course. But that was, to me, eye-popping when I first saw the internet, and I thought to myself, that's going to be pretty amazing. But I still don't think that's as amazing as what I'm seeing right now with regard to AI. I've never seen anything like this, and I've seen all of that. And I genuinely think, and am fearful, quite frankly, because I have a couple of kids, 3 kids two of them are already working. And one is going to college, but I'm genuinely fearful of what they're going to have to face over the next 20 years as AI kind of comes in and starts to put real pressure on what we do to add value in an organization. I'm curious what your thoughts are on all that.
Well, we definitely share in common the HTML thing. That was, I wanted to grow up and be an HTML developer, so I did. I started in training on it, and I actually took my first job in it working for a subsidiary of Cray Computer, and I hated it. But yes, I felt it's going to catch on. So I have a high school kid, and at the very beginning of the year, he's going into freshman year, and the schools had rejected introducing AI or supporting it. Now, again, they're starting to come around, but their initial response, at least in our district, was, stay away from it. It's bad. We know you're going to be cheating. It was really had a negative connotation to it. It was really bad.
Well, that's ChatGPT, and I get that. I mean, if you're a public school teacher, or any school teacher for that matter, you're overmatched. You're not qualified to. You're overmatched in terms of the technology that kids now have available to them, in terms of term papers and work outside of school. I have no doubt about that.
Well, so what I did was I pulled them all together, and I actually invited a couple of the teachers too, and had all the moms, and I brought them into my office, and I taught this little makeshift AI course. And what I tried to demonstrate in there was not to be so afraid of change, but change has been gradually happening. So it was really interesting going through that with, ninth graders who already think they know everything. And their behaviors are, technology speaking, in the garbage.
TikTok will do that for you.
Yes. And then you have the set of moms, we're all the Gen X, maybe a boomer or two. This is, the aliens are invading. But I just tried to simplify it to, think of like voice. I said, does anybody understand what prompt engineering is? They looked at me, like this. I said, well, who knows what Alexa is? Okay. Who talks to their phone? And so even just breaking down that you've been doing prompting for years now, help turn some light bulbs on for them. So when I think about the change, it's rapid, but is it really that rapid? Sometimes I actually like what the pandemic did, because it actually forced adoption at a mass scale. I built my entire business around technology and automation of business process. That's what I've been doing since before I launched my business. And, it's always the laggards and the people that, created the resistance. So when I look at how rapid it is, that acceleration does get intimidating. I do think a lot about what can I do now to make sure that, the generations that I care about, my kids and my kids' kids and my nieces and my nephews, are protected. And I sat in a room last week with the chief economist from EY and then CTO from Dell. And I believe the CTO from Dell said, don't let any corporation tell you they aren't afraid or they know exactly what to do, because we don't. So it's that I think the change, you have to embrace it, but you have to always be looking around the corners, because AI does have the potential to be used in a harmful way. And I think it's already rearing its head in that direction. So I'm optimistic. I love the change. But yeah, like I said, looking around the corners, that's proving to be, we have to have eyes in the back of our head, in the front of our head, on the top of our head type scenario.
Well, so what advice would you provide to a young worker who is concerned that that AI may come along and make them obsolete? I mean, what do you see as an advantage for, and ultimately a competitive advantage against technology, for a good human worker versus some sort of automated process?
Yeah. Yes.
I mean, what keeps Dell? I mean, I know Dell says they don't know what they're doing, or at least they said that to
They might be fibbing
publicly.
a little bit, you think?
But they know a lot about what they want to do, and they're just trying to figure out, how to do it. But it strikes me that every corporation has to be looking at this as a profitable revolution, that it's going to, at a minimum, make people more efficient, and ultimately more cost effective. But truth be told, that's phase one. Phase two is how do we get rid of them all? There's no doubt about it. That has to be. I mean, that's how a corporation has to be thinking. It's like, how do we maximize profit? That's their bottom line. I mean, yeah. How does a worker? So what do you think a worker needs to think about or have for skills, or what kind of roles should they be kind of migrating to? Much like, you migrated to technology when you saw the opportunity. What do you see as the opportunities for young people?
So I see the opportunities, and I'm going to go back to performance. So, compute is obviously one of the enamoring factors of AI. So like the capability for fewer mistakes, for fundamental things, I think that actually creates, for the non-scholar, non-savant, opportunities will become really abundant. So I think leveling up, whether it's a hands-on or hands-off profession, the ability to capture just knowledge is immense. Before the AI, though, before the tool sets really hit the scene, we've been doing business process automation for a long time. So, SQL, scripted things, the first time you could add an Excel, you have these little tiny tweaks of automation, and building knowledge bases. I say AI is just one big KB. But I always told people, if my kid ever woke up one day and said, I want to do a redundant, mindless job at a really big corporation, I would probably smack them upside the head. And so now when I look at the AI tool sets, I'm like, this is so cool. You have to learn. But you go back to what small businesses struggle with is probably the same thing. It is the same thing that kids that kids struggle with. And that's basic stuff. When I said the behaviors of the youth are in the garbage right now, password management, ability to manage social engineering attacks, small businesses and managing ransomware. I mean, these struggles are real and they are widespread. So you introduce accelerated tools against these imperfections, that creates a gap. So for the kids, and I'll tell you what I'm doing with my son this summer. He gets to work for me, and he's going to go on a password project where I'm going to expose him to password health, and not just technology through password keeper type scenarios, but to actually work with some family members, some corporate executives, some small business owners. And what I'm trying to ingrain is really nothing to do with password management. I'm like, oh my God, if I can just get him to see that, 95% or more of, compromises and breaches are because of poor passwords, this might align him to look at technology in a different way. So I definitely, this is going to come out really bad. I'm frustrated that the colleges aren't teaching to what the kids need to know these days. Like I said, my son is in high school and his behaviors are technology-wise are subpar to where they need to be to even handle a set of tools like this. So, I think taking things like analysis because of compute, I mean, that's pretty cool. You now can get to predictable logistics. You can remove feelings, where people used to. Here's a real live example. So I'm doing a project right now where they received an email from their managed service provider the other day, and the email was from a young worker, probably a recent college grad. And the email said, I feel that you need to do these things. And what the context was, it was a service provider who had been taking advantage of this small business by leaving them with an on-prem, unsecured server. And when you read the email, just introducing those feelings, it was frustrating. I'm like, why would a young person try to ill advise with feelings when this is a data thing? Data says you should move your environment to the cloud, et cetera, and so on. So really, I think my advice to young people is understand and embrace that data and performance, it matters, and that's where you need to be focused. And it's a lot less about, like, my son loves those influencers. I don't know if your kids do. It's a lot less about your feelings or your personal preference, and more about the data and analytics and sources of truth.
So you're business process automation, and you...
So nerdy.
No. It's good. It's
No.
high value. But ultimately, I would say that's the pointy end of the stick of AI, right? That's where efficiencies are being wrung out of large organizations, is trying to improve their process, and ultimately where you can see, I mean, it's been our experience at Solutions Review that a lot of the digital assistants, the bot elements that have been coming along with regard to machine learning prior to really kind of this proper AI push, we're all around business process automation. That most of the BP organizations were bringing some sort of level of machine learning automated tools to the party to create, cost savings, and I would argue cost savings at the cost of a human in large organizations. How do you see? And this is what I keep coming back to. How do you see humans being able to compete with the compute that you mentioned? When the compute can just cycle at such a rapid and complete pace that ultimately the answer comes down to a binary answer. It's the answer, right? It's no longer interpreted by a human that this is my opinion of what the answer is based upon everything I saw. It overpowers the problem by just computing with so many cycles of so many tests and refinements to the point where there really is only one answer, that the control can no longer be beaten. Do you know what I'm saying? Like, how does a human where does, it's almost like there's no more art, it's all science, and it's all just horsepower, compute horsepower, and then overlay that with AI.
Yeah, I think if you're talking back office, certainly it really is. But I think, going back to what would you advise young people, we're investing trillions, like $7 trillion in rebuilding the infrastructure of our country. So computers can't really swing hammers.
Nope. That's true.
Not yet, right?
That's true.
And so you really have to look at it this way. I mean, we need to retool our workforce. Not to mention, we have a workforce shortage, and so that shift is what really has to happen. The digital agents. Everybody's going to have their own agent probably someday.
I think Google and OpenAI just literally announced that yesterday and Monday.
What? Really?
That they both had massive press releases that basically unveiled remarkable digital agents for your phone.
Wow.
And yeah.
Yeah.
voice prompting, search is going to change.
Well, search has to change. I will tell you, my son was raised on search, and it cracks me up. I'm like, you better learn to prompt over here and go to voice. So it's funny because I think he's young and I'm old, and just even looking at that divider. So I've already kind of migrated over to voice, and to watch him search it up is what he calls it. And I'm like, please don't do that anymore.
Google it.
Oh my goodness. Yeah.
Well, so let's talk a little bit about your career path. So how did you do it? So how did you get into technology? What kind of turned your lights on with regard to wanting to even be a part of it? How did you first engage? And I mean, let's start at the beginning. Kind of what did you study, and how did you wind up pursuing technology at all?
Yeah. Yeah. So tech, my mom was in technology, but she actually started as an administrative assistant. And so this was in the 80s, and didn't really know what my mom did when she went to work. And over time, I took the work program in high school, and she was able to get me in at her big consulting company. That's when they realized, not me, they realized, oh, this one can put together these little wires and stuff for these new these big behemoth like desktop computers. So I started tinkering around physically with hardware, and that was where I actually liked making things work. And so I think I made like $12 an hour. I think they billed me out quite a bit more. And so that kind of love for technology started right there. And then, like I said, I was like, these web things, these websites, they're going to catch on. So I did go down the HTML path, and, it was a great first real computer job. I worked with a team out of Malaysia that was a Cray subsidiary. So I got some real big time supercomputer very early on exposure, which kept me excited. However, I'm driving around town in the Jeep with the top down and the big wheels, and I have all these developers, and they're not outgoing like me. So it started to become apparent that I might be a better liaison than actually a developer. So that was kind of where it landed.
And is that so? I'm curious. So is that something that somebody suggested to you that maybe you would like to be in client services, or
is that client services?
Is that how it ended up? I mean,
no, it was me. I really didn't like it.
You didn't like being with the developers?
I did not like being in a room. That's not unusual.
I'm sure you were.
Yeah.
I'm sure they like being with you.
Yeah. It was. Yeah.
So you ended up moving toward a client services role at the same organization?
No, I actually I was in Wisconsin at the time, and I moved back to St. Louis, Missouri. So I took a job with a pretty large company, and but then life got in the way.
Yes.
And I did a pivot, and I up and moved to Los Angeles, California, and got out of tech altogether. And so when I was in Los Angeles, I jumped out of tech, and I went to work for an up and coming company at the time called the P.F. Chang's Corporation. So it was very interesting because all of a sudden I'm thrust into high volume operations. That was unexpected, but really added a page to my capabilities.
Sure.
So I'm out in LA, meet the love of my life, end up in Dallas, Texas. When I get to Dallas, my old boss from St. Louis found out I was here and got a hold of me through my mom. And we met in Dallas, and he was running a very large operation for a very large corporation. And he said, I don't think he called it client services, but it was the equivalent of that. He says, would you want to go to Texas Instruments? I'm like, sure. Like, what does that mean? You know, I wasn't from Texas. I had just gotten here. In trying to understand, everybody knew somebody who worked at TI.
Sure.
So that was 2001. It was right after 9/11. And so when I started TI, I was, a supplier, and all of a sudden that light bulb went back on of tech is your calling, and it always has been. So I think within the first few months, I was already trying to meet with a VP. You have these people structured over here wrong. You have, Unix administrators mixed in with mainframe, and you're never going to get to the goal. And so again, going back to that, how do people interact with tech? And is it the most efficient way for everybody to get to the end goal? And so it was really, I tell you, it was Texas Instruments was so good to me for so many years. They gave me exposure to large operating systems, mergers and acquisitions, global service operations. I learned follow the sun. I learned how to buy equipment for pennies on the dollar when $1 billion company is going out of business. I learned data center operations, network operations, security operations. I mean, it was really that's having that freedom and that support from a Fortune 300. It was fantastic. My staff over time was several hundred people. And so I always tell people I grew up in Texas Instruments. And what was really interesting about that is I spent a lot of time in IT operations and in global procurement and logistics. So you've got both cost centers, no capital ever. Everything was always save money. Everything was always lean mentality. No mistakes, few mistakes, learn from your mistakes. What are your lessons learned? Continuous improvement type environment. So that was kind of where I got my mojo, I guess, would be TI. But again, so all of a sudden,
well, hang on for that for 1 second, because that's interesting to me, particularly with post-pandemic work structure now being more hybrid and remote. I believe that you're missing out massively. You think your work environment is better if you're working from home, and that your work-life balance is better, but you're missing out massively if you're not in the office having that organic interaction and being able to take advantage of, it sounds like, what you were able to take advantage of, which is interpersonal skills within the structure of a larger organization, where you can move your way into exposure for opportunities that you would not get any other way if you were working remotely. I mean, would your path have been the same at Texas Instruments if you were working remotely?
Oh my gosh, no, never. Right. I support back to office. One of the things that I was able to do at TI to just get to know people, like I said, I was new to Texas. I was new to this job. I really didn't quite have a full-on plan for what this job was going to look like. I think I was 25 or 26 years old. And because we were at work in these gigantic buildings, I went to the P.F. Chang's here in Grapevine, Texas, and I said, hey, I need one of those big tubs of ice cream. They have a flavor, a pineapple, coconut. And so I just brought it out to the break rooms. And I brought a couple people from the team and literally just had an impromptu ice cream social. But it was that day I met the CIO. It was also the day I met one of my very, very best friends to this day. She was running the help desk operations there. Her name is Gabriella. So without that, that was the day I met the most people. That was the day that, okay, you created a path to be welcomed into this environment, or people to know your name and you to know their name. So yeah, that I definitely couldn't have done that remotely. And I think there's one picture of it to this day floating around. Of course, it's not digital. It's just, a picture in a drawer somewhere. So
yeah. So, I mean, it's fascinating to me that we've lost that, and that people think that's a good thing.
yeah.
And that somehow the workplace, not just work, but the workplace is a negative space for people, and that they are much better served to be. And this again dovetails with my whole opinion that if you're looking to protect yourself from what's coming on AI, like one of the best ways to find out what a large organization is starting to think about with regard to AI is to be in that organization on a daily basis, listening to people talk about it at lunch or at the water cooler or whatever the cliche is, right? The idea that being disconnected from that is somehow a good thing. You don't want to be disconnected from that, because you need to understand what the people on the higher floors are thinking, so that you can adjust your track and potentially behavior internally to react to that, or you're just going to get steamrolled.
Oh, hands down. I'll tell you, I cringe when I see resumes or people asking for, employment referrals. Must be hybrid, or must be work from home, or seeking remote work only. I literally cringe. And like I said, I'm going to have my son working for me this summer just a little bit. And I plan to have him in some of these on our large customer sites. So he can see people really in the buildings, that what his life is to date is just the school and the computer and the games, is actually see work happening. So one of our teams the other day, I back in the olden days, which is really not the olden days, it's like 2005, which is the olden days to some people. And we used to literally have cookouts. We'd throw a barbecue pit in the back of somebody's car and get it up to the parking lots and literally just cook for the people, so we could hang out with the people and get to know them as people. And I was telling my teams the other day, I said, can somebody please get the dang barbecue pits out and make, I'm dead serious. Like it's now to the point, our teams were always considered essential. So we never got the work from home. So it was definitely a different dynamic. There was a little bit of, I wouldn't say resentment, but it was difficult to have to inspire our teams every day to go to work. Hey, the unknown is happening, but please go to work. And then go to my client meetings, and they were all virtual. And, for me, it didn't make sense. I'm like, okay, how can we get to sit here at home? And we have to tell this other group of people that, hey, you guys are okay. We have to be here to be safe. And so it was really a challenging time, but I certainly agree that back in the office, it's vital and it needs to be necessary.
Well, particularly if you're in a large organization, and where AI and automation is clearly going to make an impact, and so just getting back to your kind of career path story, I cut you off there, but at some point you left TI. At what point did you say I've had enough, or were you acquired out of a role? I know they were acquired at one point, weren't they? By Dell? Well, who acquired them?
No, TI was not acquired.
Oh, TI wasn't acquired.
No. They no.
maybe I'm thinking they acquired. Who did they acquire?
They acquired National Semiconductor. They're I think they're Fortune 300-ish, somewhere in that area.
So all right. So I stand corrected. What caused you to leave, and why did you think that your best next move was to go start something?
So what caused me to leave
Well, you don't have to.
was
I mean, if
no, I capped myself. I don't want to say I was bored, but I had capped myself and I didn't know it. And I knew, like, inside, I was going to go on and keep doing more. And TI was, like I said, so good to me. And over time, I think I was offered a job there a couple times. I was always a supplier. I said, oh, no, I can't be a number. You guys would just make me a number, but I love being the wild and crazy outsider who can bring all of these ideas, and you can love them or hate them or take them or whatever, but it'll never show up on my performance review because that's just not me. So I think I had just run my course at TI. It was 13 years, made a lot of great friends, and I learned so much. And they truly were wonderful to me. So when I left, part of it was I was doing the math. I was making the company I worked for tens of millions of dollars, and I started doing the math. And I'm like, this is silly. How come they get all of this margin and I'm getting this? I'll be honest with you. I mean,
well, that's about the time of your life where you can make those equations make sense.
Yeah, I mean, and I don't want to go into the whole scenario, but I think early on being told, well, you're the highest paid person in this company. It started to just weigh on me, and I'm like, but I'm doing the math, and no, I'm not. And so that was really what made me leave was wanting to create more opportunity for myself and really generate my own wealth, because I was never going to be able to do that as just an employee, whether I was in a big corporation or, a small company. It didn't matter. So I set out to do that. And when I left and started Fuse, I don't think I didn't have a product for 6 months because I had to go back to the drawing board and build. You can't, and there's this whole learning curve. So in a big corporation, you have access to lots of process, lots of technology, lots of, capital. You take things for granted, like printers, the little things. And so there was a big learning curve coming out is, you can't just go do these things like you did when you had this big company backing. So that was, I don't want to say a super slow start, but it was a slower start than I was expecting. And, I immediately go get that first 7-figure PO. And I think that took just under 2 years. So that wasn't too bad. And that really with Fuse, we went on a great run and got very involved. I'm very involved in, the women's business enterprise. At home, we joke. I tell my husband that, granted, at home, I have my husband, my son, and my 2 boy dogs. So there's no, hey, let's go support women-owned businesses. But I did see, tremendous gaps there. So I definitely used being a woman business owner in some of those organizations to kind of build Fuse into that, and you fast forward to meeting Unrivaled Group. Like I said, I didn't have an appreciation for what it takes to scale. You need marketing, you need digital channels, and you need software. So I get capped at TI, I make a move, get into Fuse. Things are going great. You survive 10 years, profitable, all the things. I owned my job is basically what it was. And not that there's anything wrong with that, but I knew I had more to do. And so when your big customer, I mean like Fortune 50, they introduce you to an engineer who is trying to solve these problems like macro up here, and I'm down here. I'm kind of frontline workforce type person. And when they make that introduction, it took me a couple of weeks to understand why they would do this. And we always say, well, he can build the pizza factory and you can talk to the pizza maker. And so that's really been the genesis of all of this is all those years of not just experience, but that feeling capped and really not in control of building my own future, wealth, business, whatever. And that also evolved a little bit into what I call unrivaled women. So what it takes to become unrivaled. And I don't know, you said you have kids. You a dad, daughter?
I have 2 boys and a girl.
Okay. The dad daughters need to pay attention, because it really wasn't until the last 3 years where I really opened my eyes and I looked at this game of business, which is really supposed to be universal, that women had a little bit of a disadvantage as far as how we acted or what we were taught. So this unrivaled women become unrivaled in business is really, I call it the business league. It's about driving women also to be high performing and lead their industries with resilience, sustainability, leverage the advanced technology and the AI, use it to redefine innovation, and set new standards in business, performance and value creation. I want
to dig in on this just a little bit more. First of all, there's a set of skills that you need regardless of your gender in order to start your own business. Would you?
Yep.
I mean, let's double click on that for a second. So what do you believe were the skills that enabled you to even consider going out on your own? I mean, is it sales? I always think it has to start with sales.
I didn't have a product, so I don't know. It could be sales. I just didn't have anything to sell.
But you started a bit. I mean, why did you think you could do it?
Yeah, right. I think I always embraced change, and I thought I could do it because I always had a little bit of hustle in me, that even if I didn't know exactly what I was going to do right out of the gate, I would figure it out and I would fill those gaps in between. And so I think it was that.
And what gaps did you think you had? I'm curious.
Business acumen.
Because I know a thing or two about this myself, and I mean there's a whole host of things that you need to be reasonably good at that you have no idea when you first start a business.
Yep.
That are now
I had no
on
idea.
you relentlessly.
Yeah. Perfect scenario is when we started our business, we had this guy who kept coming around and he would show up at the office and you felt good. You're like, yeah, he cares about my business. And at the end of the day, he was selling something about HR compliance, this, that, or the other. And the very first thing I ever bought, because I came out of corporate, I'm like, yes, I need these things.
Right.
These are very important things.
Right.
And the very first check written out of Fuse, out of the big company checkbook, was like for $3,000. And the return on that investment was probably zero. And I had 3 big binders full of really poor photocopies of like an HR handbook type stuff. And it dawned on me, what the hell just happened over 2 weeks? And I had no idea that like small business names, the minute you form and you file with the state, those lists are sold. And it dawned on me, I'm like, oh, he probably didn't even work for the company. Anybody can get those lists. You can make any small business your target and give them all the love in the world. So if he closed just 2 of us, that was $6,000 a month that guy was pulling in for some photocopies. Right. And I didn't have and I didn't even have the acumen to vet him. I didn't know who I was doing business with. I was just so enamored that somebody was showing up at my business and giving it some attention. So I didn't know any of those things. So when the unrivaled women piece is that it's half the population and it's a lot of my peers. So it definitely, all of the things check the box that are necessary. It doesn't matter your gender. I definitely agree with that. What I kept seeing over and over is certain pieces where technology was involved. Oh, I don't do that. My IT guy does that. Or, talk about having to be resilient. Oh, I have a lawyer or my insurance. It was more about taking on that accountability to be the leader of your business. That was the premise for Unrivaled Women. But I advocate for all small business owners. I really didn't see it coming. And to be quite honest with you, I'll share, my mom went out on her own when she was done with her job, and she started a little company. And it bared her name. It was called G Young. And she had all the pens and paper and all the tablets around the house and business cards. And I was moving out of the house at the time, and I was 18, and all of a sudden the business just went away. And that led to some other financial constraints for our family. And it took me probably until 5 years into being a business owner that I fully understand the magnitude of what had happened to her. Is that she did go in with sales and marketing because that was her skill set. She had very limited acumen, and she didn't know how to operate a business from the business operations perspective. And so it really came full circle as Fuse was starting to evolve, and especially coming into the Unrivaled group and the Real Business software platform of how do I take all of this and prevent these bad things from happening to small business.
So is that a is there so I'm assuming then that there's some value in joining a business network or some sort of peer group if it's even something like Unrivaled, where it's potentially a network of women going through similar experiences and facing similar challenges. I mean, is there a value in as an entrepreneur in having that type of support?
Yeah. Yes and no. Society as a whole, it's either take a pill and get better, go fix your beauty and get better, find Jesus and get better. There is a benefit to camaraderie. I'm more of a lead with results sort of girl. I'm a data girl. When I talk about ecosystems and the technology facilitating that, it's one of the things is not just the data layers, not just the architecture, it's the identity first in what that means. So in the Real Business software, it follows best practices, including banking and AML best practices. So going back to the Paychex guy who sold me the binder for $3,000, I had no idea who I was doing business with. And even if I would have met him at a networking event, I still probably would have been able to verify his identity. Versus in a vetted ecosystem that follows identity first practices, you know exactly who you're doing business with. So it's a KYC practice, know your customer, know your seller. So just your traditional networking groups, I think they're going to need to level up to be more valuable to their membership communities down the road.
And that's where Unrivaled is trying to find their unique selling proposition.
Oh yeah, I mean it's digital ecosystems, communities. Real Business is based on performance. It's an AI ecosystem for the enterprise. So the software uncovers and manages the data to identify, track, audit, trace contracts. So what it's doing is it's solving for visibility and performance gaps in real time across the supply chain. So that's what makes it, appealing to the enterprise. But by from a performance perspective, contracts are all we have. So if you're starting with a contract, all parties are protected because the expectations are clear. For small business, the value proposition for small business isn't just really a community. It's a place that's trusted where you can learn to position and promote and sell your capabilities and grow those over time. And even more so over time, be matched to contracts that you're qualified for. So it's more money. Sometimes I make a comment when you asked about the groups and the community. Community is definitely important, but I challenge people. When was the last time the community put $5 in your pocket?
Right.
Right.
So you brought all these things together, and that just happened at the beginning of the year, effectively. Yes.
Yes. I'm going as fast as the AI.
So still lots to do. I mean, how are things progressing? Are you finding it going at the pace you thought, bringing everything together and working with your kind of new structure, or are you still puzzling through and still have a lot of things to sort out?
Oh no, it's definitely on track. But there is a lot going on. I'll tell you, just bringing the teams together.
Yes.
That alone, I mean, we now have a very highly skilled team with like expertise spanning so many domains. It's like I said, my partner, the distinguished engineer, but he's really a security comms guy. We have team members that have enterprise ops backgrounds, Fortune 100 boardrooms and Ivy Leagues, but also small business ownership, which is so key. We have lots of knowledge in like the social responsibility frameworks, governance, risk, and compliance frameworks, but also knowledge from the tech and the business world. And most of us are like children of entrepreneurs. So that breadth of knowledge, it is really like, it allowed us to create all of this and go with the pace that we're going at and try to keep it on track because there's many balls in the air, I'm sure you know, as an entrepreneur at many times, and then merging entities like that. It's a lot.
Well, this has been a very interesting conversation. I appreciate the time. Best of luck with all that you're working on. It sounds like you have a pretty good idea of where you want to go, and it sounds like you got the skills to get there. So good luck with all of that. And again, thanks for being on the podcast. And hopefully we'll get a chance to talk in the future and catch up on how things have proceeded. I'll be very curious to see how it goes.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, we're launching pilot ecosystems right now. We're building out an entire CISO ecosystem. So I would love to keep you posted as we continue to hit our goals and grow.
Great. Thanks, Jen.
Solutions Review is inviting you to join InsightJam.com. What started a few years ago as a social media event to celebrate enterprise technology has now grown into an always-on tech community with live events, discussions, videos, vendor showcases, and industry resources. Our vetted roster of experts, thought leaders, and analysts are sharing tips and tricks daily. So if you're interested in getting involved, join the long list of companies and brands who have already participated by visiting InsightJam.com today.